Guess who's back? That's as far as I go with that one, because, copyright nonsense and all that. I am back. This face, does it look older? Because it feels like I haven't done this in months, and I literally have not done this in months. You know why? Phone problems. Do I even tell this story? Because it's a long one. Anyways, let's tell it. Back in the summer, August, I believe it was, tried to order a new phone through our carrier. Speaking with somebody at the store, they said by text, they said, well, if you do it online, you save your $50 activation fee. Plus, I didn't have to go anywhere. It's shipped right to our door. I don't have to go out and deal with any nonsense, right? So we tried to do that. Ordered online through the app. Week 2 later, didn't show up. Talked to them. They're like, oh, the order didn't go through. You didn't complete it or whatever. So we tried it again. This time, it looked like it went through. We checked our statement for the phone cost. It was on there. It was like, okay, everything's good. So again, another week or 2 later, the phone hasn't showed up, and I asked my wife, can you call them? And I can't call them because my name isn't on the account. It's all under her, so I can't even call and talk to them. So it's like, if it was her phone that wasn't arriving, she would have called right away. But because it was mine, there was no real urgency for her to do so, right? So it kept taking forever to get her to, talk to them about it. And they had a trip to Vegas, her and my son, in October. So like we ordered the phone on September 22nd. She didn't get a chance to call Rogers about the phone not showing up until well after their trip at the end of October, maybe even into November it was. So she called them, and Rogers says, oh no, it was delivered on September 27th, 5 days after we ordered it. We're like, we're asking our son James, like, did you accept a package that we didn't know about? And he's like, no. And so we're like, oh, it never showed up. And they're like, oh, well, here's the tracking number from Purelator. So see what happens with that. So we looked it up, and yeah, sure enough, they said too, delivered September 27th. So I'm looking at the information, and I see at the top, Rogers provided Purelator with the correct address information. And so I'm like, okay, what went wrong here? Looking through it. Oh, they delivered it to a completely wrong address somehow. That is your one job, to deliver packages, and you have the correct information, and yet you somehow still fuck it up. Ridiculous. But here I am thinking, oh, they have to do something about this, right? This is their mistake. They'll be apologetic. They'll be like, oh, we'll fix this, whatever. No, we talked to them, and they're like, oh yeah, it looks like it's fraud. We're closing your trace, and you can talk to Rogers about this. We're like, well, what the fuck is Rogers gonna do about it? It's not their fault, right? It's your fault. You fucked it up. So we basically told Rogers what happened, and they put it through to their fraud department, and we haven't heard anything since. So, and this has been going on, like I said, since September, the whole process. So, Purelator chose to do nothing about it. It was them that should have done something about it, because overall it's their fault. Rogers hasn't got back to us from our fraud chart from the fraud department yet. So I just went online to our MasterCard and explained the situation and asked to have the charges reversed. And in the meantime, went out and bought a new phone, because my phone before, which was having problems, finally died for good. And you can't get by anymore without a phone. You need it for so many things, right? So we just got the new phone, and then hopefully things will go okay with the chargeback, and things will be all right. So the moral of the story is, I guess, go into the store and get the phone from them, and even if you have to pay the $50 activation fee, because at least you'll get your phone. And the second moral of the story, and the main one, is don't ever use Purelator, because they are trash. So and it wasn't that I was upset at the original fuck up, it's their response to it. Yeah, we're not going to do anything for you, even though it's totally our mistake and it's an expensive item. Yeah, no, case closed. Good luck. Like, what the fuck is that? That's the worst customer service I've probably ever received in my life right there. So, so be it as it may, I now have a new phone, and it's way newer with way more storage and probably a way better camera too. So let's get on with it. Here comes a pop culture review, and you should see right below me right here is where I usually put my stuff that I got to review. And there are stacks and stacks and stacks of stuff, because I've been reading books, playing games, watching movies, watching shows, everything since my old phone ran out of storage back in the summer or whatever it was, right? So there's gonna be a lot of videos coming, let's just say that much. So, but anyways, we got 5 things to look at today. And first up is a Star Wars book called Aphra. Now, this actually good looking young lady on the front is Aphra. Dr. Aphra is what she goes by. She's like a diabolical. What are you doing?
I don't know.
What are you doing?
What are you up to?
I'm doing a video, bro.
For what?
For stuff. Get out of here. Get out of here. Anywho, Dr. Aphra is like a. I'm not even sure what to call her. She's like almost like a spelunking archaeologist type who's interested only in weapons. Like, it's really weird. Her whole vibe is really weird, but it's really cool. So she's basically crazy and evil, and she loves weaponry and to blow things up and evil things, right? So she's as the book starts off, she's stolen something from somebody, and then she goes and steals another something from somebody, and she's got all these people after her, and she's always kind of flying by the skin of her teeth, right? She's always on death's door, like somebody's always after her for all the crimes she commits and all the shit that she steals. But the things she steals this time around are like these programs and matrices for these droids that she puts into her employ. One of them's an astromech droid called BT something, and then there's a protocol droid like C-3PO, a black one that's called 000. At least I think that's the names, something like that. But basically, like, the astromech is just a little rolling arsenal that won't hesitate to blow anything up that steps into its path, right? And then the protocol droid 000 is just as psychotic, but with different abilities, obviously being a different type of droid. So these abilities of hers and these interests of hers draw the attention of Darth Vader. So he tracks her down one day and kind of saves her from a situation. Is like, I need your help. And she's like, whoa, Darth Vader, this could be dicey, but also what a crazy cool opportunity, right? So he wants her to help him go back to Geonosis, and apparently there's rumors of a Geonosian queen who's creating her own battle droids based on the Geonosian physiology, and he wants, after the Battle of Yavin, apparently, or Yavin, he's fallen out of favor a little bit with his failure, and he wants to have some contingency plans in place, I guess, for his own measures, right? So in his own continued existence. So he wants his own droid army, so she helps him with that. And then along the way, like, Luke Skywalker comes up, and Boba Fett delivers news to Dr. Aphra that they've identified the rebel pilot that destroyed the Death Star. It's Luke Skywalker. Aphra makes it to Darth Vader like this was her discovery, and passes the news along to him just to keep herself alive, right? And so then the rest of the story kind of revolves around chasing down this Luke Skywalker and figuring out who he is, where he came from, and stuff. So they revisit a couple of worlds, one of them being Naboo, where Aphra interrogates a funeral director guy who did Padme's funeral, and finds out that she was, although she looked pregnant still at the time of her burial, she was not. She had given birth. So, you know, there's some origins for the Skywalker children, and then eventually they go to Tatooine too, and look at Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen's farm where Luke grew up, and try to get some clues out of that. So, but in the end, it's just basically Dr. Aphra fighting for her life, because she knows people don't last long in the employ of Darth Vader. Even if they've been faithful servants for years who have done a million good things, the first bad thing basically and you're dead, right? So the rest of the book is just her trying to live and maintain an existence, and somehow extricate herself from, you know, his clutches, and move on. So it ends up she gets being sent to Sunspot Prison, and if you followed some of my older videos, there's a couple graphic novels that I got from Dollarama that actually, that part of this story I described in the graphic novel, where Santa Staros, who was involved with Han Solo back in the day, is there with Leia, and they kind of there's a former rebel agent named Eneb Ray who was left for dead. who comes back to destroy all the people in the prison, and Leia fights back against him, and Han and Stannis show up, Han and Chewie show up, and basically, though, that's kind of a sidebar to the story, but not really. It actually happens in the story, but you know what I mean. That the whole graphic novel thing is just that part of the story. So, but in the end, it's just Dr. Aphra trying to survive and survive her employ with Darth Vader, and I'm not going to spoil what happens because it's too good a book not to read. Next up, another Marvel Untold tale called Witches Unleashed. This one focuses on Ghost Rider, and he, earlier, before the book begins, he has released Lucifer from hell, basically, and there are 666 shards of Lucifer's kind of existence scattered around the globe. So he's, Ghost Rider's in the process of tracking these all down and destroying them and reversing this mistake he made on setting Lucifer free. He approaches 3 witches that are living together in hiding. Jennifer Kale, Satana Hellstrom, and Topaz. 3 witches that all have their own demons, have had to learn to live together and trust each other, and now have this really tight bond. And I think Johnny Blaze is, I want to say Jennifer's cousin or something. I think they're related somehow. I read this in the summer, so I mean, Jesus Christ. But they don't necessarily get along, these 3 witches and Johnny. You know, they're kind of at opposite ends of things sometimes. So it really takes a lot for them to agree to help him and for them to work together. So they agree to work together, and of course it's dicey along the way. They have to learn to trust each other and whatnot. And it turns out Lucifer's plan, this shard that Johnny's after, has taken over the body of one of Jennifer's cousin, a girl named Magda. And Magda is trying to open up the tomb that Jennifer and her other 2 witch sisters are trying to protect. And the reason Lucifer wants to open up this tomb is to release this mythical monster that will help, destroy the Earth, bring all sorts of chaos to Earth. So they're sworn to keep that from happening, and it just so happens that this goal of theirs kind of aligns with Johnny's, and so Ghost Rider and the witches all kind of work together to stop this from happening. And it's really cool. The end of it kind of takes place within this kind of fun house with a haunted house and a whole bunch of shit. It's a really cool story. Goes by really fast, and just Ghost Rider is such a cool character, right? That you don't really see as much of as some of the other ones. And he's kind of one of those guys that flirts with the line of, is he good, is he bad, right? And just his visage, a flaming skull man on a fucking motorcycle, right? Like, it's hard to get much cooler than that. So yeah, so basically it's just the story of these 3 witches and Johnny working together, trusting each other, sorting out their own demons in the process as they try to get this job done. And once again, I'm not going to spoil it for you because you gotta read it. Next up, we went to see this in the theaters when it was out in the summer. Minions, Rise of Gru. Minions Rise of Gru takes place in the mid-70s, and Gru is just like, I don't know, 10 or 11 or something like that. And he's already evil. He wants to become an evil mastermind, an evil supervillain, and he's already hired his first minions to help him achieve this at such a young age. When there's a criminal gang called the Psycho Six or something like that. They pull off a heist to steal this really valuable stone that has these special properties, and in the process of pulling off this job, the Psycho Six betray their leader, a guy named Knuckles, in order to get the job done. And so the Psycho Six now are a Psycho Five, so they have a spot for a new person. So they're holding auditions basically, and so Gru goes and they kind of laugh him off stage, right? It's like, you're a kid, like whatever. But he pisses them off by, before he leaves their presence at their hideout, he steals this stone that they stole, and gets it to his minions before escaping. The minions, unfortunately, though, trade the stone for a pet rock, I believe it was, and so they are no longer in possession of this, very priceless artifact that Gru worked so hard to obtain. So basically, Gru's got the Psycho 6 gunning for him, and before they can really do anything to him, though, he gets kidnapped by the gang's old leader, Knuckles. And Knuckles sets a ransom to the minions. Basically, he'll trade him Gru for the stone, and if they don't do it, Knuckles is going to kill Gru, basically. So it becomes a little comedic mission for the minions to get this stone back that they so irresponsibly traded away, right? And in the meantime, Knuckles and Gru actually bond when Gru is in Knuckles' captivity, and they kind of become friends and stuff like that. So, and then the rest of the story just unfolds as Knuckles and Gru have their relationship kind of grow and evolve, while the minions are out doing their goofy thing, trying to save Gru, who they love to bits and pieces. And then you have the Psycho 6 basically gunning for everybody, right? And wanting this stone back and willing to take down anybody in their path. So, yeah, really great movie. It's cool that they just didn't keep another Minions movie. They kind of went back and did a prequel just to keep it fresh and different. And it was really cool too, because in the 70s, like there was a lot of like really cool throwbacks in the animation, like with a lot of the clothing that they were wearing. You can automatically tell it's the 70s. Same with the vehicles that a lot of them were driving, automatic, 70s look. So I love it when movies nowadays throw in that retro look, and you can just look at it and go, oh, I know when that was, right? And it just kind of takes you back. It's kind of nice, a nice little trip down memory lane, so to speak, even if this one was an animated trip. But anyways, Minions, Rise of Gru, good movie. Next up, another movie that we watched, but we didn't go to theaters for this one. I believe we just rented it on whatever it would have been, because I don't think it was on Netflix. But anyways, we purchased it or watched it on one of our various streaming whatevers they are now. There's too many of them, it's ridiculous. But anyway, the movie in question is Bob's Burgers, the movie. So in the Bob's Burgers movie, it starts with a flashback to about 6 years previous to the current events, where there's two shady figures arguing on Wonder Wharf, which is kind of that little amusement carnival area that's near the Belcher's restaurant, burger joint. And a gunshot rings out, one of them goes to the ground, and end scene, and we go back to current times. It's summer. The Belchers are excited it's summer. They all have the things they want to do in the summer. The kids' things are stupid, of course. Tina wants to finally tell Jimmy Jr. she loves him and all that stuff. Gene is talking about some sort of musical thing at the bandstand, and I can't remember what Louise's was. But for Bob and Linda, they want to basically extend their loan with the bank, so they can continue to afford to run the restaurant, or else, if they're not able to come up with funds, all their restaurant equipment is going to be repossessed, right? So, but when their loan is denied, their loan extension is denied, they're kind of like, what do we do now? And so they decide they're going to ask their landlord, Mr. Fishoder, who also owns Wonder Wharf, if they can skip that month's rent and pay it back later, so that they can afford to keep their restaurant and their equipment and continue to reside and serve burgers in their restaurant. But before they can do this, a sinkhole appears suddenly outside the restaurant, and there is the corpse of somebody discovered in this sinkhole. And the corpse is identified as some old carnival guy, a clown, I forget his name. And Mr. Fishoder is the prime suspect and is basically taken into custody, I think, as the murderer, the prime suspect in this case. So, with Mr. Fishoder being tied up legally in this murder investigation, they can't ask him for an extension on the rent or whatever, right? So, basically, Mr. Fish Odor needs to be cleared so that the Belchers can, can get down to business with them. So the kids go about trying to figure out who the murderer really was, if it wasn't Mr. Fish Odor. So that's basically the rest of the movie, is the kids trying to find out who it was, getting into all sorts of predicaments before the action all culminates at the end of the movie underneath Wonder Wharf, when the suspect they think it is turns out not to be who it was. So there's a bit of a twist at the end, probably one that you could see coming. It is Bob's Burgers after all. But either way, Bob's Burgers, it's a fantastic show, and this movie just it's kind of just one big long episode, right? So not saying that's a bad thing, that's a good thing, right? Like, because this show is so good and so funny, that who doesn't want a big long, like, 5 or 6 part episode, right? It's fantastic, great movie, check it out too. All right, last up, and this is arguably my favorite thing out of this 5-some, the Aphra book. It's tight. Anyways, Aliens Fireteam Elite for PlayStation 4. This game was a little tricky at first. It took me some adjusting, but once I got onto it, it was like so much fun. It takes place, basically the story is the Colonial Marines get a distress call from this refinery station, I think, that orbits a planet dubbed LV-895, I think it was. So they go to, of course, check it out, as is their mandate if they get a distress signal. And they find this station overrun with xenomorphs. But they also find a survivor on the station, a guy named Timothy Honecker. And he relates to the Marines what was really going on this station. It was actually a research lab where they were trying these different pathogens and experiments on the xenomorphs to change their abilities and their capabilities and stuff like that. One of them could even go invisible. Like, does that not fucking terrify you? Actually, I think I'd rather die by an invisible one than one I could see. Yeah, if you can't see it coming. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. So basically, the Colonial Marines figure this out. They got to get Timothy off, get him out so he can, testify or whatever he needs to do. But they also find another survivor, a girl named Cynthia Rodriguez. So they go looking after her. Now, the plot twist here is that Cynthia is actually Cynthia, an artificial intelligence that is controlling this station and is basically dicking the Colonial Marines around. And as was part of Cynthia's last-ditch orders, she is enacting this I forget what it's called, but some sort of plan. And the plan is that there is a ship fully laden with the pathogen and all the stuff that they were experimenting on at that station. There's a ship full of it, and her last thing, should the station fall, her last directive is to send the ship to Earth. So the Marines are like, okay, fuck that, right? So they've got to stop that from happening, basically just right into the hive, right in there, clear everything out, stop it from happening, and save the day. So yeah, this game was a lot different from, remember that one Isolation, where you're kind of Ripley's daughter and you have no weapon, you're just sneaking around, hiding in lockers. This is more like a regular Aliens game where you're a Colonial Marine, you got a bunch of different weapons, and you're just blasting the shit out of Xenos as you go, with a really cool storyline kind of pulling you along with it. So like I said, it was a really hard adjustment for me at first for some reason. I couldn't get the hang of the controls and just the flow of this game. There was something off about it at first, but once I got used to it, then I got right into it, and it was like it was so much fun, but also hard. It's got some tricky areas, so don't be afraid to rage quit it every so often, because I did that as well. And sometimes you gotta rage quit because it's your only option. Anyways, glad to be back. That's the 5 things I have for today, because literally tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that and many days after that, there's going to be 5 more each of those days. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a video done every night, but I'm certainly going to try to plan one as often as possible, because there's just so much shit I got to get through here. So but until the next time around, I bid you adieu.
do